I think the idea of revision can be difficult, especially again if revision is given too narrow a definition. And so if we're going to say the only way we're going to think about revision is that you've written a piece and that now you've got to go back and change it once it's done, that can be problematic with at least some young writers. Because for some young writers, what they may very well feel, and some of us feel it as adults at times too, is I've done it, I'm done, I want to move on to the next thing. And so I think that one of the things we have to do is realize for ourselves that there are ways of revising while the piece is being written. That revision doesn't just have to happen at the end.
I get children to revise by having them start playing around with the words, literally playing with them as soon as they get something on paper. If they're children who have writing notebooks, the first day they put an entry in, the next day I might say, guys, let's try to write that again better. Let's try to do it one more time. They say the same thing. I say, yes, the same thing. Let's try to do it better. Even if you liked it the way it was, you still have strengthened your writing muscles because you've tried to do it more than one way. So revision for me is getting closer to your own image of what you're trying to make.
I write about my family sometimes in here, and that when I talk about my family, when I read it over and over again, sometimes it doesn't sound right, so I add more to it. And then, like, the next day I read it more, and then it doesn't sound good today, and then I write a little bit more. And then, like, after that, the next day I go back to it, and I look at it, and it sounds perfect after, like, the third or fourth day. And after that, it's perfect, that's all.
10-year-old Mark's reflection on his writing goes straight to the heart of revision. He describes how he shapes and reshapes a piece, changing it, adding to it, until finally it's perfect. Mark knows how to envision what he wants to say and then work toward his goal. But for many elementary-age students with minimal writing experience, just putting words on paper presents a challenge. Add to that the responsibility of revisiting and changing what they've written, and the challenge may seem almost insurmountable. How can teachers help young writers meet this challenge? What will encourage students to see that writing is a mutable thinking process as well as a fixed product? What strategies make it easier for them to revise? And how can they learn to embrace the power of revision in their own work? In this workshop, you'll see 2 lessons that address these questions by providing students with concrete revision strategies they can try in their own writing. By trying out these strategies, the students are well on their way to understanding the benefit of change to clarify their writing, and that experienced writers make revisions at any stage in the writing process. The first lesson takes place at a school in the small town of Simpsonville, Kentucky, where writing specialist Cheryl Block teaches several different levels, including this 4th grade class. For the past few days, the students have been working on personal narratives, and Cheryl has discovered that most of their descriptions need to be further developed. So she's decided to introduce them to a revision strategy that will help them create more vivid scenes.
This lesson was designed around needs that I found by reading the kids' drafts. I had hoped that we would be a little bit further along than what we were, but I found by reading their drafts that they were still writing by just listing details and not really developing the full moment or the full event. I wanted them to learn how to go through and read a piece, identify ideas that were started, but they stopped too short. I decided to take some kids' writing from last year. If that writing and that model is real and they know a real student developed it, it becomes so much more meaningful. Plus, I knew that in the mini lesson, I would have to have a common experience that all children would have. So I selected this one about the playground because every elementary child usually goes out to recess. So I decided to use that little paragraph that was taken out of a draft of writing and direct and guide so that the students could hear my thinking, could see how we would actually go about changing a piece of writing.
Cheryl starts by reviewing the previous day's lesson, a questioning strategy that helps students develop their writing. Then she introduces an excerpt from an authentic student draft from a previous year that all her students can relate to. Cheryl uses this sample piece about the playground to model how her students might expand their own writing to show more action.
Up to now, you've been drafting a personal narrative. You've been thinking about a moment in your life that has happened. Up to now, we've thought about 3 questions, and you're welcome to say them with me. We have 3 questions that help us think about ways that we want to express our ideas. The how and the why and the what. And it's important to do that for your reader. Can anybody remind us why it's important to use those questions to come up with ideas for our reader? Stevie.
To make sure that they have no questions about in the story.
Exactly. Your reader wants to go to that moment with you. And if you're not descriptive enough and your ideas don't answer those questions, your reader is sitting going, now, why did she get in that wreck? Or how did she fall into the pool? Today we're going to talk about another idea strategy, and that's to show action. When you read a book, I want you to start paying attention to this. You're going to see that the author will use words and describe action. And that action will help your picture start moving in your mind. And then you'll start creating a movie that goes along with what you're reading. Well, that's your challenge as a writer, to select your words so that your words help your reader do more than just see, but select words that show action so that what they see turns into a movie. Kids at this age, 9 and 10, usually need to be taught how to be more introspective, how to be more insightful, how to reach out and connect with other people in the way that they speak. They're still very me-centered. And so, of course, their story is enough because they experienced it. They understand their story, so you should too. And once they get the hang of questions that are asked and they begin to internalize those questions, they're never satisfied with just that first draft. They do want to reach out and make sure that no questions exist in the mind of the reader. This was a sample piece of writing from last year, before action was put into it. Now I want your eyes following along and reading along as I read it. It all started on the playground where all the kids were playing. Caitlin and I were playing on the seesaw. We wanted to go to the monkey bars. Now I can use my questions and say, well, what were they playing? Anybody have a question? Macy?
Why did they want to go on the monkey bars?
Why did they want to go on the monkey bars? Sure. Michael?
How did it all start on the playground?
How did it? Excellent. How did it all start on the playground? Robert?
Why did it start at the playground?
Why did it start on the playground? These are wonderful questions, boys and girls.
When their initial discussion of the sample student paragraph is over, Cheryl asks her 4th graders to identify sentences in the text that fail to show action. As they discuss the possibilities, it appears that all the sentences might qualify. But Cheryl and the students zero in on just one.
All right, everybody close your eyes. Can you see kids playing? Do you know exactly what they're doing, or are you having to create that picture? Open your eyes. Based on this sentence, can you see the action, or are you having to create that action? Jasmine?
I had to create it.
You have to create it. And you know what? That's just not enough. Would it be okay, Armando, if we use this sentence to show the action? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to record the kids were playing on this chart. The kids were playing. While I'm writing, I want you to make your mind turn into a movie. See kids playing and find words that would describe action. Need some action ideas? Macy.
We could say that the kids are hanging upside down and they were racing across the monkey bars.
That's two ideas. I love the hanging upside down. But instead of kids, could you use a word? See, I think I use kids here. Could you find another word? Who's out on that playground? Adults and teachers? Children. Okay. Children were hanging upside down. Where?
On the monkey bars.
Children were hanging upside down on the monkey bars. You know what I love about that idea? What is so cool is she knows that the kids in the story were going to be heading in that direction. That's pretty cool that she came up with that. Let me check as a writer to make sure I recorded exactly what I wanted to write. The kids were playing. Children were hanging upside down on the monkey bars. What's another image that you got in your mind?
The kids were running around and screaming like a chimpanzee.
They never do that, do they? All right, we had kids and we had children. Can anybody think of a different word for Miranda?
Boys and girls.
Boys and girls. Say that again, John.
The boys and girls were running around and screaming like a chimpanzee.
Boys and girls were running around
and screaming like a chimpanzee.
And screaming like a, oh boy, chimpanzee. I know this word is going to challenge me, so I'm going to go ahead and put a line as a writer, and I'm going to try to use the word parts to help me spell. Chimpanzee. Now, you know, when I look at that word, I'm not sure if it looks right, and I'm not sure if it needs to ease. Because this word doesn't look right, I'm going to leave a line. I'm not going to stop and check and use the dictionary, but I am going to go back and check the dictionary later on when I finish my piece. But for right now in drafting, this is a strategy that I use. Now let's stop for just a minute, and let's reread our ideas.
After using the student writing sample to practice the strategy of creating a movie in the mind, the students return to their seats. Now their job is to experiment with the strategy in their own writing. They rely on a partner to help them think about how and where they might change their drafts. During this paired work time, Cheryl circulates throughout the room, observing what the students are doing and asking questions.
We had been at the beach all day, and it was time to go home in the golf cart. We had no room in the front because my dad was driving and my mom was sitting next to him. We also had the beach chairs and the shovels in the front. My cousins Zach and Alex were sitting next to me. So my mom had asked for Caroline to sit on my lap. Off we went. My dad's foot tapped the gas pedal and we